I'm sorry, what's your name?
My name is Sherry
Hi.
Helston.
I'm on the Residents Association
Great.
on Roosevelt Island. A couple of questions. First of all, you talked about a hotel on the premises. Now, my husband just said, oh, every university has that. Well, I don't know that because I never saw it, but okay. Do you perceive that there will be any kind of a traffic issue? Because, of course, we only have the one street with people coming and going. That's one.
Okay.
The other question has to do with our AVAC system.
Yes.
Are you planning to connect into that, and would you be willing to, I mean, one of the things I would think is to, well, I'm sure this will come up at a later point, but to update our system.
So both excellent questions. So let me take the second one first. Yeah, we're obviously familiar with the system, and we're actually looking into it. I don't know, Fernando's actually here. I don't know if you want to say anything about it. My understanding is, first of all, it wouldn't run down that far. What's that? Exactly. So it's one of those, I think, remarkable innovations, for lack of a better word, that we're looking into as we go through the planning process. As far as your first question about the hotel conference center and traffic, let me expand the question, because I know the question I get asked the most about, and I totally understand this, is transportation, traffic, both through the construction period as well as the impact of just having this different activity on the campus. And all I can say right now is we understand it, we understand the reason for the question, and we're studying it, and as part of the Euler process, that's part of what gets studied, is what's the impact going to be. One of the things we're doing that will help is building residences so that the community itself, a great number of them, live on the campus, but certainly we need to understand that. The trick is going to be, I got asked this question, I think, at the town hall also, as you think about traffic and parking and that kind of thing, striking the right balance so that we're not encouraging more cars on the island. I don't know how to put it any differently. So we have a lot of good people trying to get their heads around what is that right balance. But I understand it. I've heard the question before.
Ma'am?
Oh.
There's a lady there,
Judy.
Hi, Kathy. Welcome back to Roosevelt Island again.
Thank you.
It's
I live here, so.
It's really funny. I was at Goldwater today, and we now have 1,000 employees at Goldwater, and we don't realize how much traffic we have, just from down there. And, their parking is sprawled out all over. What used to be gardens and flower beds and stuff is all became blacktop over the years. And I really do, I know it's utopia that no one's going to drive here, but those suburbanites that come in and have to drive. If there is going to be an on-site garage under the buildings, to me that's wonderful, because we've always had the terrible transportation problem of just getting people down to the tram and then trying to get people to a new campus. So I fully think that some, a limited amount, not 1,000 spaces, built into the system is fine, as long as it's hidden.
I hear you, and yeah, I mean, one of the things that we all need to understand is what is the incremental impact of some of this activity, and how do we improve on it? So your point's well taken.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Thank you, Kathy, for doing this wonderful presentation.
My pleasure.
Yeah. My name is Hill Krishnan. I'm a professor at NYU teaching science, technology, policy, and also at Yeshiva, the same course. My question is related to creating job opportunities and also retaining the jobs in New York.
Right.
Because you could create wonderful students, graduate from here and then move to West Coast, as they do some from Boston to West Coast. Yep. So I know you're developing infrastructures which will bring things, but in what ways are you doing for the creative process, like convergence, having other companies associated will create people to stay here and develop, one. And second is also recruiting our students from K to 12, you said, and to retain them here. They're basically New Yorkers, so they would like to be here if there are facilities available here to start their own companies and create the innovation going. So in what ways is Cornell thinking? And also, what would they expect from city government to provide to enhance that process?
Great questions, great questions. So first, we think, number one, you need to focus your academic program on the kind of industries that make sense for people to want to stay here. One of the advantages that businesses want to be in New York is they're close to their customers, and they're close to their supply chain, or they're close to whatever the reason is. So we need to, our program needs to be consistent with what New York's all about, and that's why you saw those hubs. But getting more tactical, one of the things Pete and I have actually been doing is talking to a number of people here in the city, and we will talk to more, about how do we do things like create what we're calling a one-stop shop, where a student graduates from the campus, and if he or she wants to be an entrepreneur, how do you make it really easy for them? Because if you can get them over that initial hurdle and get them established, then there's a good chance they'll stay. And so we will have an incubator on the campus, a small incubator, but when you need to push them out the door, how do you get them to land on their feet? So that's number two. Number three is, one of the reasons I believe the Cornell proposal was so strong is the 50,000 alumni we have in New York City. We all know business works on who you know and your connections and your network. And using that network to help these people both stay and succeed is critically important. When we went out and we did that survey I told you about, where we found out how entrepreneurial our alumni are, one of the questions we asked is, would you be willing to be connected with this campus, mentor students, help people with startups? And we got an overwhelming response. So all of that is already starting. The last thing I will add is, it's not directly answering your question, but one of the things we're working on now is, how are we going to measure the important metrics that tell us we're successful in what we do? And we're still thinking through that. But one of the things to me is, where do our graduates live 5 years out? And metrics like that, and make sure we keep our eye on the ball, because you're right, that is the bottom line. That's what we're trying to do, is get these people not only to succeed here, but to stay here. So those are some of our ideas, and I'd love to talk to you later about others. Did I touch on most of your questions? Okay. What's that? Oh, and Pete reminds me, one of the things that Cornell has committed to as part of our proposal is, we're going to take $150 million out of our endowment and invest them in New York startups. And that also, I think, will be quite helpful to the startup community.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a slightly different question about transportation.
I'm sorry.
I love the tram, and I love the new version of the tram. I mean, it's great. It's very 21st century, sort of. I mean, it isn't.
I love the
but
tram
the
too.
bus system, you get off the tram, and our red bus system, it's much better than it was a year ago, but it's still not. So my question is, have you thought of putting in something that's really a 21st century kind of a people mover system?
That one hasn't come up with me directly. I haven't heard that. I've certainly heard about pay attention to making sure the bus system adequately supports this new activity. There's been discussions about ferries. I heard about the elevator that used to come off the bridge, but I haven't heard about that. But I will tell you that some of our alumni have some amazing innovations in the transportation area. Everything from, everything from scooter kinds of things. I just think there's so much potential here. I don't know. Now, I know Jonathan, where is he, Jonathan? You're even working on, facilitating bikes. That's not high tech, but it works.
You haven't been thinking about anything.
But a high-tech people mover, I have not specifically. About transportation, yes.
Well, yes, but I mean something that's a little more. Okay, let me tell you, if you don't mind.
No, please.
I went to high school with somebody who went on to become an aeronautical engineer. And he's a very bright guy. Among other things, he actually built the first motorcycle that Evel Knievel was going to use to jump across the Grand Canyon.
Oh my goodness.
Except he decided Evel Knievel was so nuts that he dropped out of the project. But he's done a lot of very outside-the-box things. And he has a website. And on it, he's got, that's why I was thinking about it, he's got some sort of people mover ideas that are just, totally would blow your mind.
I think it's fascinating, and I don't
So
know if...
That's why I thought about it, because I thought, well,
Yeah.
here's a perfect opportunity to do something that would be both green and efficient and 21st century.
Interesting. I'd love to learn more about the website. Yeah, give us the website.
I'm going to move over here. Yes, sir.
My name is Al Key. I'm with the Swim Coalition in here in New York, and we're very concerned about stormwater runoff polluting our rivers. And Roosevelt Island is an island right smack dab in the middle of a beautiful channel, estuary actually, and this amount of impervious surface could grossly impact the water quality both in, in both the channels surrounding the island. Could you outline some of the strategies that you're using to reduce the impervious surfaces in the campus, as well as what your stormwater goals are for the site, or has there been much thought to that? It's too early in the process. Who's going to be doing that kind of thing?
So I'm so glad you asked the question, and has there been much thought to that, because I can answer that question far easier. I'm not an engineer. There has been a lot of thought to that. So we've been working with field operations and other top-notch engineering firms as part of this. It's actually part of the sustainability approach to this campus.
You said it was sustainable. So
Absolutely.
That's
So they've been giving a lot of thought to that, and everything from rain gardens, and again, this isn't my area of expertise, but there has been a lot of thought given to that, and I'd be more than happy to follow up with you with some of them to get into more of the specific ideas that they're coming up with.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So
Well, at this point, it's
happy
just
to do that, because we agree with you.
strategic stuff, right? It's just,
What's that?
It's just strategy at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's strategy, but we're gonna be soon enough. We're gonna be starting with actual plans, and so we're giving a lot of serious thought to it. It's part of the whole sustainability approach. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the question.
Well, the federal government is actually mandating swimmable, fishable waters, I think, in 2030, and I think the Plan NYC is pushing us in that direction anyway, so.
Yep. Did you want to add anything?
No, I think you mentioned that Plan NYC is starting to create a framework for that. I think nobody can do a project of any scale, certainly not of this scale, without thinking about stormwater runoff and trying to reduce it and more organic ways that have been done in the past.
So just so you know where we are in the process, as I said, we're just about to hire the architect for the first building. We just engaged a construction manager who is Tishman, and we're just building the team that's actually going to now start getting into that. We're working with AKRF and some of the planning. We have some great engineers, so we have a top-notch team, and that's a big part of what they're thinking about.
Thank you.
Sharon, you had anything?
Kathy, I am so glad that Cornell was chosen. When I understood that it was this big contest between Stanford and Cornell, I was really hoping for Cornell. I appreciate Cornell's mission as a land-grant institution, and I'm actually intimately familiar with the Cornell Cooperative Extension Program. A wonderful, wonderful program. My understanding of the project is that the project is expected that the final build-out year is somewhere in 2035. Is that correct?
2037.
Okay. If I recall, the environmental review is only for a 10-year period. And I'm not sure about that, but I think it's only for a 10-year period. Assuming that is correct, if that is correct, and in particular with your emphasis on building, having the phase one as a separate construction entity, and then phase two. I'm wondering whether or not it's possible to do just phase one first and then come back and do phase two and go through the process again, and so that we can have a firm understanding as to the impact of phase one. I raise this because there seems to be a trend in the city of massive capital or institutional projects that have build-out years that are, I think for many people it's profoundly difficult to wrap our brains around. You know what?
I know exactly what you mean.
I hate to imagine how old I'm going to be. by the time that this is finished, and I'm embarrassed to
We
admit.
will all be much older, there is no question. What's that? Sure. Andrew will answer, and then.
Sure. I'm relatively new to the project, but I can tell you, and you'll hear more on the 22nd at the scoping session, but an EIS does not look at only a 10-year window. It looks at what's called the full build, which is the 2037 year. It will also look at several build years along the way that have been identified, and that'll be laid out in great detail on the 22nd, and everyone will have a chance to review it and comment on it. So you'll be able to see that.
Thank you. So,
And it also look at.
You're saying that the impacts are, or will be analyzed for the entire.
Yes.
building?
Yeah, there's a legal requirement that you have to do what's called a cumulative impact. So we actually couldn't go out and just say, well, we're going to study phase one and deal with the rest later. Once you've announced that you're doing a major project like this, you can't segment it out. So what we can do is we can reveal and discuss the impacts of each segment individually, but we have to show what the cumulative impact is as well. So you'll see all of that.
And as part of that, we have what's called a reasonable worst-case scenario, which really lays out, whatever we can imagine, what would be the most significant impact possible over that period of time.
And we also look at a no-build scenario. If the project were not to happen, what would the impact be in that
But it's
case?
for the entire.
Yes.
building?
Yes, the whole thing.
Yes, both phase one and the entire.
Yes.
Thank you, that's a great question, and I'm so glad he's here.
Anybody? Yes, sir, you have a question?
Hi, my name is Dave Overby. I had a question about, you're about to announce the architect for
Yes.
the first academic building.
Yes.
Is he also going to be involved in the design of the partner building and the housing building that's going to be centered around it?
Maybe or maybe not.
Okay.
Most campuses, at least the campuses I know of, will typically open up for each building that's going to be built, open up and ask architects to express their interest, and you select. So certainly, right now, we've only engaged with him for the first building.
Okay, and you're planning on having 3 separate academic buildings and then
Over time?
over time, over the 25 years
Yes.
with the additional partner buildings and
Yes.
okay, for each. So is there any overriding design principle? I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like that's a lot of opportunity for the architectural context of the island to become extremely attractive.
Thank you for that question. And I'm going to go back to, again, how much time we're really we're putting into this campus planning, master planning effort. And those are exactly the things we're talking about, which is how do you make the campus feel connected? What's the right level of dictating design standards versus letting the uniqueness of an architect come through? And so as part of our campus plan we're coming up with, you will absolutely see those critical elements that say, that don't make building a building feel jarring. None of us want that. That you feel some continuity, but you let the expressions come through. And also you keep in mind that a building built now and a building built 15 years from now, there may be different materials, and how do you keep that into account? So we're trying